Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, where we explore the art of finding balance in a chaotic world. Join us as we delve into insightful conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience. I'm your host, Dan Schmidt, and together let's embark on a journey to live our best lives. This is BeTempered. So what's up, everybody? My name's Dan Schmidt. This is episode number 1 of the BeTempered podcast that we hope you will come to enjoy and find some inspiration and some motivation from. Like I said, my name's Dan. I'm from a small Midwestern town in a rural area in Ohio. I grew up on my family's farm, and I currently own a couple different businesses. I farm with my dad and a couple employees, and I have 5 children. And joining me in this new endeavor of the BeTempered podcast is my cohort, Ben Spar. Ben?
I grew up in the working class, what I like to say, a really small community. And, my mom and dad were in the work class where 9 to 5 they were gone all day. And I think that I was kind of raised by a community in that aspect of it. And now I work for Dan, actually, just here recently. And father of 3. And I'm actually the president of a youth WEAG organization, which I'm really big into youth sports and from that perspective on how we can grow the work ethic and everything through sports. And just excited about this podcast.
All right, Ben, thank you. I think what you'll find is we're basically just 2 ordinary guys who have a passion for our small town community, a passion for wanting to help people, to work hard, and to do what's right. And in small town USA, there's a lot of people like us. And so we just kind of want to share that story. And just to kind of give you a little background of this podcast, how it came to fruition, why we chose the name. So why decide to do a podcast? For me, there's a couple reasons. And one is I wanted to document my life's journey from this point forward. I have some family lineage that were business owners and that were involved in some of the world wars. And they passed away when I was young. And as I'm older now and I think back on what their story was like, the challenges that they faced, I think, man, wouldn't it have been cool to know their story, other than what I know from what I've been told. And so looking forward with my family and hopefully having grandkids someday and great-grandchildren down the road, I thought it would be a really unique thing to document where I'm at, where I've came from, and where I'd like to go. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason to do a podcast is because I've been influenced in the past year and a half, 2 years, by a lot of inspirational people who do podcasts. And in fact, I listen to 2 or 3 a day if I have time, whether I'm in the car or I'm walking outside or working out or whatever it may be. And I feel like I have a little to give, and maybe to a small audience. I don't know where this will go or what it'll turn into, but I feel like there's guys just like Ben and I, doing our thing every day, working hard, very involved in our communities, and just trying to make the world a better place. And there's a lot of people out there that struggle, and whether it's with work, with family, or sicknesses, whatever it may be. And we just felt like, hey, let's give this thing a try and let's see where it goes. So in regards to the podcast, the name BeTempered, in owning a glass shop, there's tempered glass. And tempered glass is 4 times stronger than regular glass. And to get that strength, it is put in a fire. And it gives it the strength. So same thing with steel. Anytime there's tempered steel or iron or anything gets tempered, it is placed under fire. And so the true definition of what it means to be tempered is to undergo a process of controlled heating and cooling to enhance strength and resilience. In materials like glass or metal, tempering increases durability and resistance to breakage and deformation. And in a broader sense in life, it refers to developing emotional resilience, self-control, and composure in facing life's challenges. And we all face challenges on a daily basis, some greater than others, but everyone's got a story, and everyone has to get through it. And so that's part of the BeTempered, being related to the business that I own and the field that we're in, and also trying to, through all of life's adversities, to remain calm and to try to live our best lives and help people along the way. So with that, Ben, I don't know, is there anything you have to add in regards to the BeTempered name and maybe something I didn't touch on?
So I think the big thing is, I agree with you 100% on the grandparents aspect and documenting. There's a lot of stuff that I wish I knew about my grandparents, just from value standpoint, those were two of the most influential people in my life, was my great-grandpa Stokes and my grandpa Cook. And to the point where my two oldest boys, or actually not my two oldest boys, but two of my boys are named after my grandparents. So you have Walter, which was my grandpa Stokes. That's Jude's middle name. And so that's Walter Stokes. He grew up in coal mine. I think he finished, I believe it was 9th grade. And then sheriff, and just, he was big into service. He was in the Army. And then my grandpa Cook, that was my best friend growing up. That was my mom's dad. And so Evie got doubled up on that. So that's my youngest. And so that's Everett Paul Spar. So Everett's from my grandpa Solomon, and then Paul is from my grandpa Cook. So pretty cool. When you mention that, it's just, I always mention my last name's Spar. It means a lot to me because that's, when I was taught at a young age, that's kind of where you're at in life. Your name means everything. Don't do it any injustices or anything like that. So I feel like grandparents and just heritage, that's what we are, and so that's a big deal for me. And I just really, that's one of the things that I love about this podcast. I feel like we can document that, and then when you talk about having something valuable to say, I always think that if there's just one person I can help, then I want to help them. So if there's one person that listens and I help them, then this podcast was worth it. So I'm excited, though.
and if you're out there, one person, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, one person. I actually met my wife back in high school. She went to the rival school, Brookville. I went to Dixie. So I believe it was, let's see here, she would have been 14. I would have been 14. She would have been 13 when we met. And rival schools, and that was the good old age of 10 cents per text. So it was a different time, a different era, like I keep saying. But it was. Was
it a text on a flip phone?
So sometimes it was, yes.
So you'd have all, number one was ABC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
for the longest time, that's what it was on Virgin Mobile.
Oh,
I don't believe they're around anymore. But that's who Lisa and I both had. And Lisa went to Brookville. I went to Dixie, and we dated throughout high school, and then I thought I was going to go play football, and then just different things in life happened with Delphi moving, shutting down. So that was when Dad lost his job, and there's just a lot going on to where I decided not to go, and thought we were going to go. I was going to go to Mount St. Joe, committed there, and just decided, no, it's time to go in the working force.
So was that a tough time for you? I mean, being an athlete and having this vision of wanting to play college football, and then all this happens. I mean, where was your mind at?
Right, yeah, it was. I mean, it weighed on me for, because you always say, and it's one thing with high school athletes, I feel like you always say, well, I'm going to take a year off, and then after that year off, I'm going to go right back to it. And that's
never happens.
Yeah, that's even what I told Coach Hubert at Mount St. Joe, like, well, I'm going to take a year off, wait till things settle, and stuff like that, and it just never happened. And yeah, it was tough, and it got to the point where 3-4 years later, tried out, made an arena football team, so I could get a $100 paycheck, and then did that for all of maybe like 3 months, and then first game happened, then we go on a road trip, and you realize those aren't the guys that I really wanted to surround myself with. $100 game checks, and there's just a lot of stuff that happened with that. But so it was almost like I felt like at that time, which I didn't have to, but at that time I felt like I kind of had to prove myself that I was a good enough athlete to do that, and So I guess I try to do that for validity purposes,
Right.
which is kind of stupid looking back on it, but it is what it is.
But at the time, you just don't know, and that's what you want. And
right. So I went from that, and then that was when I first got my first desk job, which was in the outdoor sports industry that I just came from and worked in for 15 years. And so you went from our practices, we 10 to midnight every time at Inglewood Indoor Soccer Facility, and then we played our games at Hare Arena. And so
I snapped my Achilles at that place.
At Hare Arena?
No, at the
Inglewood.
Inglewood, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sadly, it's not there anymore. Well,
Yeah.
It got burned down, I believe.
It did, yes. Yeah.
But so I feel like that's where the next journey of my life started, was because at that point in time I was still lifting, so being athletic, and then I got a desk job, and it just went downhill from there, weight wise, mentality wise, and so then fast forward, man, probably 4 or 5 years after that, we were sitting at we were actually at one of Lisa's company's parties, and we were doing one of those Wii video games where it has the camera and I can't remember if we were swiping fruit or if it was like a dance one where you do the crazy dance moves that they're doing on TV. But anyway, it played back, and when it played back, I just watched the TV. I'm like, is that me? Like, is that really what I look like? Like, you see yourself in the mirror every single day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I saw how much I let myself go after being an athlete, and it was hard on the psyche, hard on everything. And then at that time, I started dealing with like self-confidence type issues, like, well, who am I? Like in high school and everything, like I was known as, an athlete, like played football, played basketball, was all conference in both, was all state in football. And then it's just like, all of a sudden, it's just like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I dealt with that for a long time. And then, eventually that was the day that physically I was like, I'm going to get back in shape. So got a Y membership, started lifting, and it got to the point where it was 3 times a day. I would go in the morning to West Carrollton at 5
You went extreme.
I went extreme, but it was sports that held me in it again, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an athlete. I'm very competitive, and so I'd go play basketball from like 5 to 7, go to work at 8, and then at lunchtime I'd go to the Y, swim from noon to 1, and then come back, and then at 8 to 10 I'd go back to Inglewood and play basketball with that group. So
how long could you maintain that kind of regimen?
So it was like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the good thing is, and I'm still in it, where I get group text messages and people talk trash to you, and that alarm hits different when somebody's talking trash.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I feel like the camaraderie in sports kind of put me through that, but then it's still, I dropped, I believe I went from like 316 down to 275 just by doing athletics, not changing anything with my diet. It was still horrible.
So 316, was that the heaviest you've ever been?
That's the heaviest I know that I've ever been, yeah. I remember stepping on the scale when I was 316, and I'm like, sheesh.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me the day that, I think it was like the day after I decided I was going to go to the Y, and I had this picture of a green, like a green smoothie,
Yeah.
And taking a shot like this, and it's just like, I look back on it, you can see like, I was a bigger guy.
Yeah.
And, even in I remember kind of going back to high school. At first, I thought I was going to go D1, because I got letters from.
That's what everybody thinks.
Oh yeah, you get letters from Ohio State D1, and then I got a letter from Ohio State. And, I talked to their coaches a couple times, and they decided to go with Jake Ballard, who ended up winning a Super Bowl with the Giants.
Yeah.
And went and played and had a good career with Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think won a national championship, and he was also 6'8". Not 6'8".
Right.
And he went to Division I Springboro. I went to D. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I remember them telling me that was too light. Like on a high school, I was like 160. So you think about 160 in high school, and then 316 later in life. It's just. Yeah, well, it really.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, but so then from there, I kind of went and got better in nutrition, did keto, and then ended up getting down to like 220. And the keto was, that my body's never felt better when I did keto, just because of my knees and everything. But it's really hard to maintain, just because
it's a
I
challenge.
love fruit,
Yeah,
I'm a carnivore, but I love fruit.
Right.
So that's my big thing.
So where was your mental when you were 317? And when you started there, what was your mind like?
So when the good thing is when you're that heavy, you drop weight quick.
That's true. Yeah.
Like when you're not taking, not even walking, a lot and taking steps, and then you just go to that extreme, you just drop quick. So at first you're like, man, this is awesome. lost 10 pounds this week. I lost 15 pounds, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, gained 1 pound this week. You're still lifting, but your body's transforming. You got to know that it's going to do that. So my psyche was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think, you know, going through that, I keep looking back as I'm sitting here, you know, and I took notes. It's just the roller coaster until later on you'll find out, like the hard 75 kind of, I feel like changed that for me.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a roller coaster, and it was a roller coaster. So, and the weight loss journey, I feel like when I did keto, it kind of, and I hit that 220 mark, like that was my goal.
Yeah.
So it was like, all right, and then I kind of fell back into let's see how hard I can work, and if I can outwork putting on weight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of still where I've been at.
Right.
Know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a constant challenge, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Kind of my life journey, and well, at least through the weight loss, you know. And,
yeah.
And then there's the kind of the flip side of it was you talk about the mind and stuff like that, and I feel like self-confidence I struggled with for a long time, even, you know, through the weight loss and all that, and it's still something that you still battle with every once in a while. Like we talk about, you know, off camera and stuff, the imposter syndrome. Like I view the imposter syndrome as kind of the same aspect of like a self-confidence issue.
It is, yeah.
Like, because you're holding yourself like, well, am I really?
Yeah.
Am I really there?
You let that doubt creeps in, and like, you know, you feel like you're doing a good thing, and then all of a sudden somebody says something, or you see a picture, and you're like, man, like, is this really working?
Right.
Like, I understand that.
Yeah, and so then one of the big things that helped me I wouldn't say self-confident wise, well, kind of, but religiously, like I feel like that's a big thing in my life, and you know, one of the big things for me was the way God uses different circumstances and everything, and there's a point where I go to church every Sunday, and you know, you feel really good, like you're really part of something, but you're not really living, like I feel like it. And so there was 3 years in a row, I remember we were going to CLC and Christian Life Center, and they kept talking about Swaziland, like going on a mission trip, and I'm like, well, like, no, I'm not qualified for that, you know, like I'm not a pastor, not a doctor, like what can I offer?
And you weren't really, I mean, did you go to church growing up?
I did not. So Lisa did. Lisa, her best friend's dad was a pastor, and Lisa has that. So she, you know, my mom and dad, they talked about God and stuff like that. I think there was like some issues, but I feel like everybody says it, like issues in the church when you're younger and you stop going when, you know, and I was too young to remember if there's any issues in the church we were attending. But it's just like that seems like that's always the excuse. Yeah. And I don't know if it was or not. But, so Lisa and I, you know, we church hopped for a while, and then we went to CLC and started becoming, you know, help with the youth and stuff like that. But really never felt qualified to go on a mission trip. And then when we had Jude, there was certain things that happened where it felt like the church was too big for us, you know, and partially it could have been on us too, going to a bigger church now, like it, you know, take some, leave some type thing, you know? And so, but you know, I never had that confidence going on a mission trip. Well, then, you know, from that it led me back to back to New Lebanon, to First Baptist Church in New Lebanon, and there people knew me, so they knew what, you know, how to poke, and so there was a mission trip for Haiti, and so Lisa and I, we felt kind of called to do it, but it's like, like I'm still not qualified. And I kept telling Lisa was wanting to go. Like, Lisa's an adventurous woman. Like, I love it about her. Yeah. And so, you know, we're wanting to go. Well, I'm not qualified. Well, then finally, one of my buddies was like, Ben, like, why aren't you going? Like, and I'm just like, well, I'm not qualified. Like, we're building a fence, Ben. Like, how qualified can you be? You know what I mean? And, and so we ended up selling our car at the time, a Cobalt, and going to go.
That's pretty awesome.
Haiti, and using that money to go to Haiti. Yeah, and it was the most life-changing time because, you know, at that point, I feel like dealing with like self-confidence issues, dealing with just like, you know, working class. Like, we never had a lot growing up, so you're dealing with those issues, and then all of a sudden, you go over there and you see what those people deal with. You know, you get off the plane and you see the pastor that you're with handing a guy, you know, money, that way he could secure the bags because he knows which people are real. He's going to take care of your bags and which people are going to take them. Yeah. And it's just a whole thing over there. And then you see the powder blue UN helmets. Then you leave. You know, there's no electricity, just generators, and that's what powers it. So we worked at an orphanage over there and built fences. And one of the good things about being tall over there is you know, there's not I was one of the tallest guys, and
Right.
it was a joke over there that every tall white guy that comes back over there, name for all the kids will be Ben, because there's fruit over there that's called knips, and they're up high in the tree because all the lower ones were already picked. And every kid would come up and go, Ben, Ben, Ben. And then they'd point up. And that's the only thing they could do. So I'd pull down these knips. And so it was just that over there, the first thing, we just had Jude and he was 2. And so I'm like, we're leaving our kid. Like, man, like this is tough.
That's tough, yeah.
One of the first things, I want to say it was like, we're off the bus for an hour. And like this 2-year-old just runs up. No parents around. No diaper, no anything. Just runs up to us and just gave us a hug. Like that's all he wanted was a hug.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and you're talking to some of the translators, are like, yeah, like the moms, over here, they just kind of let their kids run while they try to figure out food and stuff like that. And the whole issue we were over there was putting a fence, while the guys over there were putting a fence around the schoolyard because people would drive their mopeds and stuff right through there, and it was a big issue over there.
Okay.
So we literally put a fence around, and it didn't seem like much going over there, but it was just
life-changing
times in my life. So I felt like confidence-wise, I came back and like I said, I was a sales rep in the outdoor sports industry. It took a while to come back from that. Like, the customer called me like, I was supposed to get this package Friday.
Yeah.
It's Monday, Ben. Like, do you know how big of an issue this is? And I'm just sitting here like, yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
so,
like, dude, you know where I just came from and what I just saw?
Like my wife, she went with some doctors and stuff and was praying over people while they were getting medical attention. Yeah. And there was a lady that tried to get Lisa to take her kids home with them. Like, we just take my kids with you back to America, because she didn't want her kids growing up in that.
That's crazy.
And like that environment. And then you see over there, we'd have like nightly revivals, right, where we just came and we'd worship together. And then you have people that's you'd invite and they'd be like, no, like I can't go, like I don't have the clothes to wear to be able to attend that. And it's like the different values and stuff over there. It's just it really
it's life changing,
right? Yeah. So I just feel like in those ways. So that's kind of like the way I was kind of built religiously. And then tornado in Brookville, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
But so we used to live out there in Brookville, and where the tornado dropped, we have a friend that lives about a mile up the road, and she took a picture of the tornado drop in probably a mile or 2 away from her house. Like you could see the lightning, and you could see the cone dropping, and you realize how close it is to your house. And then there's one in Arcanum. Well, we're in between we're on Dark Montgomery County Line Road, so you're talking maybe like 4 or 5 miles in Brookville, and then there's one that dropped towards Arcanum that was probably like 5 or 6 miles. And so, we always hear, growing up in Ohio, you always hear about tornadoes. And what always happens, tornado siren goes off, a couple trees blow over. Yeah. The news makes it sound like Armageddon, but it's not.
Right, yeah.
And so then all of a sudden you start getting pictures on Facebook of like, well, look what the school looks like. Look what Terrence Park looks like. And so...
ripped the roof off the school, right?
Right. And so at that time, I just transitioned over to my new company in outdoor sports. It was Iron Valley, and my boss, he recruited me over there. We have a really good relationship, and I could remember calling him that morning, being like, Jeff, like tornado just hit, like it's bad here, like I don't feel like I can work, like I feel like I need to be out there. He's like, go, man, like you're good, just go. So I went to Brookville, and the community there was amazing. Like everybody has a chainsaw in Brookville.
Yeah.
That place was demolished. So by the end of the day, I went like first thing in the morning, bought a chainsaw at Home Depot, came back, and we cut. End of the day, all the trees and everything, were pretty much cut. The way the community came together, and then we went up. So that night, I went up the road to Trotwood, and they don't have the same like chainsaws and everything, and you just see the devastation on their faces. Like, what do we do?
Right.
So then I think it was like the next week and a half, 2 weeks. That's all I did. Every single day, I woke up, went to Trotwood, and just cut trees. And I remember there was like almost a sense of frustration because everybody would text me and be like, man, Ben, like it's a good job what you're doing out there and stuff like that. And that led to me to one of my favorite Bible verses I still live by today, and it's Galatians 6:2-3, and it just says, Galatians 6:2-3 says, shares each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. If you think you're too important to help someone, you're fooling yourself. You're not that important.
Yeah, that's great.
That's still what I almost live by. Originally when you talked about the podcast, like I'm sitting here like, this is awesome. Like Dan is the most interesting guy in the world.
Dude, listening to you, I'm like,
like the reason why
the heck am I going to talk about?
No, like the reason why I did a job change was because I view iron sharpens iron, and seeing your work ethic all the time, the type man you are and stuff. Like I'm like, yeah, like this will be awesome. Like I can help do a podcast. And then you sent me over like the website thing and had me on there. I'm like, what? I am not, you know what I mean? And then you know, we talked a little bit and you're just like, well, you know, we both can help people.
Yeah.
And then what hit me? Galatians, you know, right
Yeah.
there, that you don't think you can't share someone's burdens. You think you're too important. Well, guess what, man? You're not.
Right.
You know, so
yeah.
like if I look like a fool, you know, or whatever, I don't care.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to help someone and,
yeah.
you know,
and that's what it's all about. I mean, and I think that says a lot about a small town community feel. I mean, obviously you were raised in a small town. I was raised in a small town. So we don't really know what it's like to live in a big city.
Right.
I have lived in a bigger city in Cincinnati, but, you know, that was when I was in my 20s. So I wasn't, I was more about my career and having a good time than I was about getting involved. But when you when you grow up in that in that small town and you feel the love from those people when you're in school and you're competing in sports, and then as you go away, you get a job and you do all the things that you do, you don't forget that feeling. Mm-hmm. And so, that I think that's what's interesting about both of us and about a small town. I mean, there's a lot of you and I out there that do a lot of stuff for kids in the community, and that's so important in life. And I think, in the bigger cities, I'm sure that there are some of that, but at the end of the day, what you do with the Pee Wee football program, and what we've both done with the basketball and all these kids, is show them that we care, because someone did that for us.
Right.
Whether it was our parents or our grandparents or just the community in general, because there's so many people out there struggling. And if it could be something as simple as a smile, right? Simple as a smile, or simple as a good morning to someone, or just asking them how their day is. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that don't have any hope, and think that, they're just living their lives with no one out there that cares about them. So I feel like just doing this here, I hope, like what you said, even if it's just one person, at the end of the day, that's one person that maybe we helped, who goes and helps someone else.
Right.
So, yeah, I after hearing you tell all that, I'm like, holy cow. I haven't been on a mission trip. I mean,
yeah, no, you live an amazing life.
Well, I am very grateful for my life, but I haven't. Man, that's gonna be tough to live up to, man.
Jeez. Like, what are you talking about?
Imposter
yes, there is. There's so much that I want to know.
Well, step in anytime and ask questions if I don't do a good job. All right. So my journey in life, I was raised on a family farm. My parents raised corn and soybeans, and my dad had some pigs, and we had some cows growing up. For me, being raised on a farm was just an awesome experience. And we didn't have much because my dad was raised in a funeral home. My grandfather ran a funeral home that my great-grandfather had started. So, he was from a larger family, decided he didn't want to have anything to do with the funeral home, but he wants to farm. So he basically started with nothing in 1976. I happened to be a product of the 1978 blizzard, which I just realized here a couple years ago. I kind of did the math, and I was like, hey, when was the blizzard of 78? It was in January, February. Okay, I was born in October. So
carry the one.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, that's great, Mom and Dad. Know what you guys did. So anyways, growing up on the farm, you learn the value of hard work. We didn't see my dad a ton, but, I saw him enough to know how much he cared. And just by watching him work, I mean, they didn't have a lot. We didn't grow up with much. In fact, the the house I grew up in is just down the road, and then there was a couple of different houses that we lived in are all on the same road. I currently live on one end of the road. The main farm is on the other end of the road, but growing up on the farm was awesome. But lots of trials and tribulations with livestock, and seeing how difficult it is to raise a pig in the winter. And back in those days, the pigs were outside, and so we'd get a heavy rain, and the pit was outside, and the pit would fill up, and the pigs would be out there swimming in their own crap.
Yeah.
And those are just little things that you see as a kid, and then you see your dad out there trying to take care of things, because you don't want these pigs to die. And it's like, holy cow, you don't realize as a kid how that impacts you growing up, seeing how important it is to care for animals and relating that to caring for people. So it was a great experience growing up. The farm has grown into a fairly decent, it's a small family farm, but a decent size operation for Ohio that is still going on today. So
how many pigs did you have growing up?
Growing up, I think Dad just had a couple hundred pigs.
How many pigs do you have now?
Currently 4,800, which I swore I'd never do pigs, but we'll get to that. That's a whole nother animal that has kind of come to fruition in the past 10 years. So grew up on the farm. We moved a couple times to bigger farming operations as Dad got new opportunities. A lot of hard work, baling hay, baling straw, helping bed cattle down. We had at one point, I think we were raising close to 500 head of cattle, which is a lot of work. You got to feed them twice a day. Got to keep the pens clean, keep them, all their shots, make sure they're healthy, all that stuff. So just great experiences and life lessons on the farm. And so from that, I went to a little school called National Trail, very similar size and type of school that you went to at Dixie.
Yep.
Both schools didn't have a whole lot of success in athletics.
Yep.
And probably if you ask anybody in our area, both of those schools would be considered at the time, and maybe some still now, that's an easy win for us, here or there. So
which you guys were in
we were in the CCC, which everybody called the Corn Cob Conference.
Yep.
It was the Cross County Conference.
We were in the SWBL, which I found out during the high school all-star, everybody called the Slow White Boy League. And I did not realize that's what it was, but that's what we were in at Dixie.
Yeah, that conference was much better than the one that I was in. But so, had a lot of success growing up. As a kid, I played baseball, I played basketball. I didn't get into football until middle school in the 7th grade, and that's really where I found my passion. Growing up, I thought baseball was the greatest thing in the world, and played a lot of it and had a lot of fun, and I was good at that too. But when I got into middle school and then into high school, and I just really like hitting people, and I'm not a fighter, but on the field I could be a fighter. So just more life lessons. Playing football and basketball and baseball. And luckily in football, I was good enough to go on to college, and I went to the University of Dayton and spent 4 years there, which was some of the best 4 years of my life. Not just because of playing sports. College is a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun, but the relationships that came from the university, there's 4 guys that are like brothers to me, and those are 4 of my roommates that I played with in college, and some of us are local here, and one of them is down in Dallas, Texas. But just a phenomenal experience. Had a lot of success in college. We won 3 out of 4 championships while I was there, which was pretty cool. Got to play in some pretty cool places in San Diego. I played at the Yale Bowl.
Nice.
Got to fly to games. It's by no means a big Division I program like in Ohio State or Alabama or any of those schools, but it was big enough for me. And, coming out of high school, I thought I was this stud, and I'll never forget. First camp, it's August 1st or whatever, and coaches bring in, I think there was 43 or 46 freshmen they brought in that class. And, we're all feeling pretty good about ourselves. We're going to play college football. And so the freshman parents, we say our goodbyes, everybody's crying or whatever. And we go into this big auditorium at the university and sit down, and the coaches give us the spiel about what camp's going to be like and what we can expect. And they just told our parents when your son calls, you just tell him it'll be okay and you hang up. You don't give him an out to come home. You just tell him it'll be fine. Just push through it and hang up. And so, you're hearing all this stuff and you're like, yeah, well, I can play football. This is UD. This is 1AA football. I'm better than this. I'm a Division I athlete, whatever. All the things you're jaded by when you're at that age. And I'll never forget, they open the doors and here comes the upperclassmen. And I'm watching them walk down in these auditorium steps, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm not the biggest guy in this room, and I'm not even the 60th biggest guy in this room. And where'd my mom go?
Right.
And I'll just never forget that feeling of, watching those guys come in and then going through the whole 3-a-days at the time. And actually at the time for us, UD was redoing Welcome Stadium, the AstroTurf.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting down new AstroTurf. And this is not field turf like the kids get today,
right,
that has a nice soft. This is the AstroTurf where you take a knee and you get up and your knee's bleeding. Yeah. That's how sharp the AstroTurf was. Turf burns, you'd get up and you'd have a 3rd-degree burn on your arm because you just slid across it. Well, UD was redoing the Welcome Stadium turf, so it just happened to be during camp. So we would get in school buses, and they would bus us to the center of Dayton, in a unique location.
Yeah.
Let's say, and so we would go through practice, and my very first college football practice, 2-a-days. We go through practice. I think I learned more in that first practice than I did in all 4 years of high school. I mean, it was just like so much was coming at me. My head's spinning. It's 99 degrees outside, hot and sweaty. Your life's just been flipped upside down. You thought that was going to be this great thing, and then it's like, this kind of sucks, And we get to conditioning, and what we didn't know at the time was that the trainers, when they lined this grass field that we'd been bused to, that they made the field an extra 10 yards wide on one end and wide on the other. So instead of it being a 50-yard field, it was a 70-yard wide field.
Nice.
So we start running beasts, is what we call it. So it was down, back, down, and back. So they do it in order of upperclassmen. So the seniors go first. And you got to make time. So whatever you run your first one in, the next one you got to beat it. Well, they couldn't, and these guys were dying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, keeled over. And I knew that I know what I did that summer, and I knew it wasn't enough.
Right.
And so we go through this whole practice. We run. Everybody's puking. I mean, coach is ticked because nobody's making the beast. They're like, "Do you guys do anything all summer?" And in the year prior, they went undefeated.
Right.
So, and most of those classes, the starters, most of them were back. So the expectations were pretty high. Coach was hot. And I remember getting on that bus, and everybody just looks like death. And they're like, I'm thinking, now I really want my mom. Now,
right.
Now I really want to go home.
Yeah.
Because if these guys are dying and I'm dying, this is the first practice,
Right.
Well, then we come to find out the second practice, they actually mapped it out and realized that we had ran an extra 20, well, it'd be 20, 40, 20 to 30 extra yards, which is why people weren't making their time. So anyways, that was my first experience with college football, and was like, oh.
That's a legendary coach.
That was Mike Kelly, who's an NCAA Hall of Famer. He was like a second dad to me. I mean, he
that's amazing.
Yeah, and he was the kind of guy that he wasn't a player's coach. I mean, as I got older, and then I started my junior and my senior year. I was a captain my senior year. Boy, he'd hold you accountable. And there's times I got a personal foul. We were down playing Austin P down in Tennessee, and hit the quarterback, and the ball goes flying up in the air, and cornerback picks it off, and I get up. We're running it back. Quarterback, I'm waiting for him to get up.
Yeah.
And I just smack him again, and then I kind of maybe stood over top of him and maybe said a couple things.
Maybe. That was before replay.
Yeah, that was way before replay. And might have gotten a personal foul. And Coach Kelly met me at the hash line and, proceeded to do some things to me that this day and age would not be okay.
Yeah.
But I got the point. And
Right.
I knew what I did was wrong. But, that's I learned so much love and respect from him just because of how he coached, and he had a system for 20 plus years that, it worked.
Absolutely.
We had some really strong teams and had a lot of fun. So for me, going through college and football, and I was a communication management major, which I did because I wanted to avoid math. And now that's all I do every single day. Take that for what it's worth. I wasn't the best student, but I made it. I got through.
Yeah, who needs to know how to put a fraction into a decimal?
Yeah, you're learning that now.
Who needs to know that?
Yeah. So go through college, get a job down in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the construction industry, building houses. Didn't know nothing about building houses. I grew up on a farm, right? I knew how to swing a hammer and fix a fence and do things like that. And, go work for this production home builder down there as a project manager. And, man, you talk about more life lessons and more learning experience about how to deal with people, how to manage people, how to build a house. We're building $500,000 homes. And at the time, this is in the early 2000s. It would have been 2001, 2002. The housing market was cranking. And so at one point in time, I had 15 homes going, all of them around the $500,000 mark, which that's a lot of money. And back then, it was even more money. Building homes for lawyers, for doctors, for business owners, and as a 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old, whatever I was at that time, that was a big learning experience, how to communicate with them and how to listen. And, it's not so much how you say, but how you say it. Mm-hmm. And then flip that over on the other side, running the job, dealing with the contractors, my concrete guy who don't have any teeth, my framers who were Mexican crews who were some of the greatest guys in the world but didn't know a lot of English. Just complete different spectrums and classes of people, all good in their own right. But as a young kid, trying to manage that and to figure all those things out, there was a lot of tough lessons that I learned. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, because there was 2 years there where it was a lot of stress. It was a lot of challenges. Building a home is not an easy thing. And for most people, when they decide to build a home, that's a big time emotional investment in their lives. And in most cases, that's the biggest investment that they'll ever make. And then they come and they meet 22-year-old Dan Schmidt. And they're like, who's this kid,
Right.
So, I had to learn a lot about just communication, just understanding different people. And it was a great experience. So from that, while I was in Cincinnati, I met my wife through one of my old teammates that she went to high school with, my wife, Kim. We played co-ed flag football together down there. That's how I met her. And that's how my buddy Randy got me to go to play flag football. I was like, dude, I'm not playing flag football. I'm not doing it. He's like, well, there's a girl I went to high school with, she's pretty cute and she's single. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So me and my other roommate, he heard the same thing. Well, I'm going too, Well, so anyways, I won.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, Kim and I met, and from there we decided, she's from a small town that is about an hour north of where we're at, and from Cincinnati it was about 2 hours. And we knew the city kind of wasn't what we wanted. We lived there for a couple years. I had a lot of fun, made a lot of friends, bought my first house down there. But home kept calling us back, and we got engaged and decided, okay, we want to move home. And we've done, working in the corporate world. She was a kitchen designer. So she worked in downtown Cincinnati for a year or so, and then got on with a smaller kitchen design company and worked for them for a while. And but we knew we wanted to be home. And at the time, I was like, you know what? I want to do my own thing. I don't want to work for somebody. As great as Ryan Holmes was, the company that I worked for, is corporate.
Right.
And, when you're involved in a corporate environment, for someone like me, I didn't like it.
Nope.
I didn't want any part of it. I learned a lot, and I am grateful for that experience, but I knew, after a couple years, I'm going to do my own thing. So through one of my best friends, 4-year college roommate, him and his dad still do an insurance company in Richmond, Indiana. And they knew that Kim and I were looking to move home and wanted to do something, and called one night and said, "Hey, there's a little glass shop for sale, and it's been around for 20 years, and the gentleman that owns it he just wants to be done. He wants to get out." And I said, "Brad, buddy, I don't know nothing about glass. I know I'm building houses, and there's windows in houses, and there's shower doors, but I just make the phone call and tell them to come put them in."
Right.
So, but I don't know if it was just, young and dumb, or, I was like, okay. So my parents went and looked at it, met with them because we were in Cincinnati, and, Dad called that night. And he's like, "I think you guys need to come and check this out." So we came up a couple of days later or whatever, and met with the former owner, and was like, okay, let's do this. And so we worked out a deal, and that would have been in the summer of 2003, and ended up closing on the business in October of 2003. I spent a month or two kind of out with the guys, just trying to figure out what I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
What all this little glass shop did, and so at the time there was 2 installers, there was a shop guy, and then there was a lady who did the books. So 4 people were there, and man, a whole other learning experience,
Right.
I thought being in the corporate environment was challenging, and it was, but owning a small business has its own challenges.
Mm-hmm.
When it's small, it's family. So, those things in the corporate environment where, that bother you, it's a whole more personal feeling on a small business side, because it's like family. And
Right.
So, man, same thing, a lot of life lessons. I was 24, 25 years old when we bought the business. The two installers who actually still work for me to this day had been there. One of them was original number 1 employee that was hired, and the other one was the number 2 employee, and his dad was who I bought the business from. So there were some challenges for sure, but we were able to work through them, and things have definitely worked out. So buy the business. That's a whole nother podcast that I could talk about those, the last 20 years of being in business, and where we were then, where we've been, the challenges throughout that business, and where we're at today. But through all that, Kim and I are married. We move home, and want to have a family. And she's from a family of 5. I'm from a family of 2. I got a younger brother, 4 years younger than me, and she was ready to start having kids, right? And so I always said I had the rule of 32. So we would have, in 3 years, we would have 2 kids. That was my thing, and she always wanted 5. I have 5.
Who won?
She won. Yeah, she won. So, we have our first child, Allie, and then Leah, and then Nate, and then Mary, and then Ryan. So 5 kids, who all are currently now. Allie is the oldest. She's 18, getting ready to go off to college, which is insane.
Yeah, hard to believe, right?
Hard to believe. that, I can remember when we brought her home from the hospital, and, that feeling you have with your first kid, and now, like, she's going to be leaving the nest,
Right.
and watching her finish up her last couple months of high school. So, just so many, again, just great experiences with the kids, and learning lessons as raising any kid. There's not a manual on it, right?
Right.
So, we've had a lot of fun. We'll continue to have a lot of fun with them, and it's exciting to watch their growth and development, from going to little kids and growing into adults. So, throughout that whole time in 2012, and keep in mind, my dad's still farming, throughout this whole process. Me growing up on the farm, although it was a great experience as I got older, it sucked.
Right.
I was the oldest child. I was cheap help,
Yeah.
right? And so any of the dirty work that Dad didn't want to do, or his hired hand didn't want to do, Dan got to do. So my view of the farm, once I was in high school and got into college and got away, was, I don't want to farm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like farming. It's a lot of work. 2012 comes, my dad gets cancer. You're diagnosed with cancer, goes in and has his prostate removed. Everything goes good. Comes home. A couple days later, he gets really sick. He had all kinds of infections and E. coli, and there was about 2 weeks there where he was in intensive care, and we about lost him. So at this point in time, in 2012, the business is doing pretty well. We've been through, I was almost 10 years into owning the business. It was not easy by any means, and it's not to this day. But, I kind of felt like at that time we had started to turn the corner a little bit, because as a small business, especially purchasing a small business, there's just a lot of challenges and bumps in the road. Anytime ownership changes in a business, there's challenges. But when it changes and you got a kid running it,
Right.
It's even more challenges. And I think for me, being as young as I was, that helped me, because if I were to try to do it now, I don't think there's any way in hell I would do that.
Right.
But Dad gets cancer. We about lose him. It scared me. And it was like, okay, my brother had been involved on the farm, and then he wasn't. He's a teacher now, a high school or a middle school teacher, doing very well, and has a great little family of his own. But it was just Dad and his hired hand, and so I looked at that and I thought, man, if something happens to Dad, I don't, I know what I knew back in high school when I did all the dirty work, but
Right.
Agriculture has changed so much, and it changes every year because of technology.
Right.
But from the 90s to 2012, there were some humongous changes, right? 2012, 2013. And so I was like, okay, I really need to get back involved in the farm just to have a fighting chance if something happens to him. So I was like, okay, got a small business. I don't know how many people we had at the time. Let's say we had 10 employees. I can't just sell it.
Right.
That's like divorcing your family. You can't
Yeah.
do that. So I was like, well, what do I do? Well, I'll start observing people and see if I can find a manager to run the day-to-day operations, because that's what really took a lot of my time.
Right.
So I did. I started observing people. There's a guy that I'd known that worked for a local contractor, and through different processes and different things, it was very evident to me that he was the guy. And so we met and discussed, and he came on board, and I believe that was 2013, and took about a year for him to kind of get his feet under him. And he knew construction, but on the glass side is a little different.
Right.
And from there, I went back on the farm, and fell in love with it, and really enjoyed working with my dad. Really enjoyed, kind of the newness of the farm for me, because there was a lot there that, like I said, I had no clue growing up as a kid. I'd just sit in a tractor and go work ground or whatever it was.
Right.
And so I fell in love with it. And all at the same time, the business is doing really well. And then it's like, holy cow, there's a lot of moving parts here, you know? Kids are getting older, getting involved in sports. Business is doing good. I'm on the farm. And then it's like, when you have a little success, for me, it's like, okay, what's next?
Right.
You know, what's next? What how can I improve this, or what can I do to make this better? And so it was like, okay, on the farm ground is really expensive. It's not something that's made. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a lot of opportunities to purchase ground. So, and even if you could, you had to have the money to do it, and it's not cheap. So, I was like, I'm going to have to do something in livestock. Well, then it brought back all the memories as a kid, and, you know, trouncing through crap, you know, on a rainy day, nasty, hard work, and animals are very, very can be difficult to raise, you know, just like a person. They get sick, you know, there's just all kinds of things that can happen. But did a lot of research for about a year and decided to build a pig barn. And I hated pigs.
Here you are.
Here I am. But it made the most sense for the farming operation. And it was a good thing. So that was 6 or 7 years ago that we decided to build the barn. Mm-hmm. So here we got the glass company. We're farming, you know, a decent amount of ground. Got the pig barn, and we've done numerous other things, you know, smaller things beyond that stuff. So what I have really come to realize throughout all those experiences in life and with kids and with businesses and employees and everything is that for me, if I'm bored, that's not a good thing.
Right.
Because that's when my mind starts working.
And
what's next?
Yeah.
You know? And usually for me, that's kind of this time of the year. You know, we're in the winter here, coming out of the winter in Ohio. And, you know, fast forward to bringing you on board, and that's a whole nother story there. But then, you know, podcasts have changed my life in the last year and a half to 2 years. And it was always kind of in the back of my mind, it'd be cool to do a podcast.
Yeah.
But who in the world wants to listen to me, you know?
Me?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So, you know, after you and I have had, you know, numerous discussions, it was like, well, I mean, what's we got to lose? So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's kind of, you know, for both of us, how this is all kind of came to fruition. And, you know, where it goes from here, I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like over the years, farming, especially, I feel like it's taken. I don't want to say it's cool again, because I think farming's always been cool. But like now, you're seeing nationally, it's like starting to become like a big deal. Like a couple years ago, The Ranch. I don't know if you ever saw that show.
Yeah.
Where I'm sure you hated it
if
you saw some of it. But it's like that was the #1 show on Netflix for years. And then you watch it, and it's like it's about the struggles on a farm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the real world problems. So I feel like, I don't know, I think it's fascinating.
It is.
Personally.
I mean, it's so vital to the fabric of our country, right? I mean, without farmers, we don't have food. Right. I mean, and you hear that, and people think, you know, differently. Well, it's the truth. I mean, there's so much that we do on the farm, just in our little operation, that you know, guys like us all across the country and especially across the Midwest and then out in California and but in every state there's agriculture. I mean, it is so vital to our country and our world. So it is unique. With that, there are a lot of unique challenges.
Right.
But it's definitely shaped me and who I am and my work ethic. And I think it's really shaped my kids, you know, growing up on the farm and raising animals, the same types of experience. I mean, if there's an animal out there that's relying on you to feed it, it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or sleeting. It doesn't matter if you're tired, right? You got to take care of it.
Right.
And so, you know, those are all valuable lessons that I learned and that my kids have all, you know, are in the process of doing right now.
Absolutely, because it's probably, you know, sink or float, right?
It is.
I mean,
yeah.
You either got work ethic, and I feel like in order to be a successful farmer, I've never been a successful farmer. I raised some chickens and half of them died by a lightning strike. But outside of that, like I've never been a farmer, but it seems like the only way to survive on the farm is you got to have great work ethic, and no matter what, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like sink or float. Are we going to have a successful farm where we're able to have it, or
Yeah.
not? And so
Yeah, and
I can see how that shaped you for sure.
Yeah, it's and I think it helped me in business. I think it's helped me in communicating with people. I think in every aspect of life, it has helped shape who I am, and helped shape how I communicate with people. Because you develop that sense of caring, for an animal, just like you care for a human being. That I think a lot of people lose sight of in this world of just caring, right?
Right.
So yeah, definitely unique. I have people all the time. I think you said it the other day. I don't know how you do what you do. And,
Right.
I hear that a lot, and honestly, I don't know how I do it.
Yeah.
There's certain days I'm like, why in the world am I doing this?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I also know if I'm bored, it's not good.
Right.
So I'm usually not bored.
Yeah.
I usually there's always something to do with the businesses or the kids or the farm or whatever. So I'm blessed to have an amazing family, an amazing wife, fantastic employees, because none of that is possible without people.
Absolutely.
So that's why I try to, you try to hire people that have the same vision and goals and outlook on life as you do, and I think that's very important in the success of any business. Mm-hmm. is not necessarily having all the experience, but having the right people, because they'll figure it out.
Right.
So
I think so your big podcast, so you listen to podcasts often. Who's your go-to? Obviously both of us are Andy. We both did 75 hard.
Yeah, so 75 hard is that's, we'll talk about that on a different episode. That was definitely life-changing for me, and I know it was for you. But
Absolutely.
so podcast for me, my go-tos are Andy Frisella, the Real AF podcast, Ed Milet, who's unbelievable, Brendan Bouchard, he's very motivational, John O'Leary, again, he's got an inspiring story. On the business side, there's Alex Hormozy, who's very good, and Jocko, the Jocko podcast is pretty interesting.
Got to talk about deep voice.
Yeah, Jocko's got a deep voice. So, those are kind of my go-tos on the podcast. Do you have any others that?
Yeah, so Andy's pretty much my go-to. I'm big in like the motivational speaking side. So like, I love, and the motivational athletes with the kids, right? So that's the big one. I know Kobe, like that's one of my favorites. Just you listen to his mindset, and it's just like if you can get anybody to get in that mindset where it's my mentality. That's why I tell my boys, you got to have that killer instinct, killer drive, but then just at the end of the day, just be better than you were yesterday. And
that's
I feel like that's something that we really walk and live by.
Yeah, so. I agree. Yeah, that's what I told the kids. In fact, I was talking to Mary, she would be number 4 in the Schmidt family. The other day I said, it's all about stacking up wins, right? There's 7 days in a week, and, I don't expect you to be perfect all 7 days, but, if you can win each day, or win 5 out of 7 days, and then you multiply that times 52 weeks in a year, that's a win.
Right.
You're getting better every day, and whether that's mentally or physically or whatever it might be, I think that is so important in life, and those are things that I've always known. I haven't always lived by,
right?
But that's really the past year and a half, 2 years. That's kind of what Andy has been a huge influence on that with 75 hard, and it's just all about stacking up wins and understanding you're gonna have days you get knocked down, but just like in football, did you stay on the ground or did you get up?
Right.
And that's what is important.
Yeah, that's what I talk with Cy about, and that's the thing. I think Cy's my big one. He's probably the most like me. Not right now, but
You can see it.
You could see it. Like I could see it in myself. Like back in the day, like I found a picture the other day of a family picture that I was in, and I'm running away and like my whole family's smiling, and it's like everybody, like grandparents, cousins, and there's one kid running away, and that was me.
Yeah,
so
that's Cy too.
It is
yeah.
Cy, 100%. But then you realize that they're watching you. Like the other day, I looked on my Spotify, and I actually think we were in the car, and I was like, I wasn't listening to a motivational thing. I'm like, who's listening to a motivational thing on Spotify? And so I was like, that was me, Dad. And I'm like, oh, like, and he's like, yeah, you listen to him, so I listen to him. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's a big thing. Just win the day, like you said.
Yep.
Just be the best version of yourself, and I think that's the other thing. You can't compare yourself to other people. You know what I mean? Just be you in your own skin, and if you want to, just be better every single day. Like, take something, try to get better at it, and you'll be successful. So
yeah, and everybody's got a story, right? I
Right.
mean, everybody has had significant things happen in their lives, good or bad, and we all have a choice how we react to those things. So I think that's where we want to go with this podcast is doing some interviews with people who nobody may know about. I mean, nobody knows about local people know about you and I, but at the end of the day, there's normal, everyday people from small town USA who face challenges and struggles just like, all these guys that we listen to or the people that they have on their podcasts that somehow, some way, find a way to get up in the morning and to keep going.
Right.
And so that's really what we want this BeTempered podcast to be about is doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how you grew up or what what you've experienced in your life, good or bad. It's that you keep going, and it's that you understand that you're going to face challenges, and you're going to be put in situations and circumstances that are going to challenge you, and how we can react or how we react to those is what we hope is to be tempered, right? To remain calm, to be stoic. And to be the best version of yourself, no matter how bad it might seem.
Right, and then the glass industry side of things too. You're going through a challenge, you're going through a tough time in life. Just think you're in the fire right now. When you come out of that fire, you're going to be stronger than you were when you went into it. So
you'll be tempered. So that's episode 1. We thank you, all 1 or 2 people that listen to this.
We thank our family for listening to it.
For wondering what the heck we're doing one other thing for, but we appreciate you listening, and there'll be more to come. So thanks for your time, and thanks for sharing it with us, and go out and be tempered.